And when I started having complete faith in my body's ability to thrive and operating from that perspective instead of operating from the identity of I'm sick, my body started to shift too. And so the beauty of all this is it took me 20 years and a long and winding path, and probably a couple $100,000 spent over the years between treatments and supplements and all the things, to realize that in a lot of cases, most of what we need is within us and within nature, and is not expensive, and most of the time is entirely free.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining us for another great episode of Bioenergetics Beat. I'm Heather Gray, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and certified bioenergetic practitioner, and today is brought to you by NIKKI, Unleash the Wellness Within. It's a non-invasive, easily affordable, and highly effective approach to optimize wellness. It's a wearable device that puts frequency better-based life in your hands and on your wrist. You're going to want to make sure to the very, very end, because as usual, we have a wonderful giveaway you're not going to want to miss out on. But as per the usual, you're not going to want to miss out on one word that my next guest has to say. She's a personal friend, a fellow health warrior, wellness mama. Like, I love this woman to death, and we're going to have so much fun. And she's going to be dropping some major truth bombs on us today, and I can't wait. Without further ado, let's welcome Katie Wells to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to get to chat.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've just been so excited. You just opened up a wellness center, so like brick and mortar in Florida recently, right? Tell us a little bit about that before we get started.
I did, absolutely. It actually kind of felt like the culmination of lessons that were reinforced for decades in Wellness Mama, which is the importance of community. And we, of course, can have that digitally. And I love that. And I think it's very valuable. And post-COVID world, too, I just felt like there was such a need for actual proximal in-person community. And that's, of course, something we see in the blue zones. We know that the loneliness is now worse than smoking. And I feel like in today's world, if you build it, they will come, but you have to actually build it. You have to be intentional, whether that's creating small communities within our like micro communities of neighborhoods or with friends. It's like we have to put that intention in. And I just realized that was a personal need I had, kind of a self-serving need. So I spent about a year building a wellness center that has all the wellness modalities, but also co-working space and a really big focus on community and getting people together for events, because sauna is great. Sauna is better when you do it with people. And, yoga is awesome and yoga is great when you do it with people. And so just bringing people together and kind of nurturing that vitamin H or humans or nutrients idea that we need humans around us, and that's actually a huge marker for all aspects of health.
Absolutely. I was so jealous because at the time when you got started in that, you're in Florida, I was in Colorado. Now I'm in Mexico. I'm even further away. But there is such a huge longing, and recently being divorced, and I get the importance of community, and the God, loneliness can just be so freaking crippling. And even as a practitioner, I can use all my tools and know all my things, but if I let that little demon come in, it can go scary places. So I just, God bless you for building this. I think it's amazing that you're able to do it. Tell us a little bit more about Wellness Mama. Like, who are you? How did you get started? Why this road?
It definitely wasn't the road that was planned. I feel like that's true for many of us who get into this space. I hear that, like, sometimes people become psychiatrists trying to figure out what is going on with them internally. And I've seen many examples, myself included, of people who originally got into health and wellness in some capacity, trying to figure out what was going on with ourselves when we couldn't get answers from the places we were supposed to be able to get answers from. And that was kind of my story. It was a kind of a dual purpose thing. My background previous to that was actually in journalism and research. And when I started having strange health symptoms, combined with when my oldest child, who's now 19, when he was 6 weeks old, I read in Time magazine that his generation would be the first in 2 centuries to have a shorter life expectancy than their parents, which was like, it shocked me. And holding this perfect newborn and reading what we're now seeing play out for their generation, I decided in that moment I wanted to somehow contribute to trying to change that statistic. And so those two things combined led to me turning my research and journalism focus to health and starting to uncover things that at the time were not being talked about that now I'm very grateful are mainstream. So there's been quite the evolution of Wellness Mama over the years. But the really beautiful part that developed is I realized many other moms were in a similar place trying to figure out what was going on with their own health or trying to create a healthy living environment for their families and their kids. So in that time, especially blogging was kind of coming into the awareness, podcasting was becoming a big thing. And I was able to connect with these incredible moms who are still part of the community. And to me, I really feel like moms are the ones who actually have the power to shift these things going forward. Because not only do we actually control the majority of purchasing decisions, which is why moms are often the target customer for every brand, but we're also raising the next generation. And when we create ripples through our habits, through our daily life, through the way that we're interacting with our kids, that ripples to future generations, and it's exponential, not just one-to-one. So it's been an almost 20-year beautiful winding journey. I'm extremely grateful for it. In the process, I got to finally be actually given the word Hashimoto's as to what was going on with my health, be told I would have that for life, I would take medication for life, decided I didn't agree with that, and now have reversed Hashimoto's, not take medication for life, and have reaffirmed my belief that the body is always on our side, that it's infinitely capable of healing, and that when something's going wrong, it's actually still doing its best to communicate with us and to do what's absolutely in our best interest. And so that's kind of, I feel like the tone of Wellness Mama has shifted in the last 7 or so years as I've moved more into that mindset from healing. But the mission has always been the same, which is that amazing group of people, especially moms, and the ability they have to affect so much change.
Man, moms can move mountains. Like I've never had these visceral experiences happen except for when my kid was being, not attacked, but in some way, I needed to stand up for him. And my kid was diagnosed with celiac disease at the age of 2. And I remember going to the hospital nutritionist, and I had already learned 10 times more than she even knew. And I felt like I needed to give her a bill by the time that I left because I was teaching her about celiac disease. It was crazy. But no, moms can move mountains, and it's amazing what we can do when our little ones need our help. So I absolutely just think that's a beautiful path. And it's too bad that, I'm glad that you figured it out before anything happened to, had to happen to your kiddo to kind of spark this change. But, that interview, I remember reading the same thing and thinking the same thing of going, oh my God, what do you mean they're not supposed to outlive us? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, to your point, you see the jokes, but I'm like, they're only funny because they're true. Of like, a concerned mom can do better research than the FBI. And that is not an exaggeration. And I see that over and over in my community is these moms who, of course, for the sake of their kid who's having whatever experience of struggle that they're going through, these moms become the best researchers I've ever seen and the most dedicated practitioners for their children that I've ever seen. And they show up 24 hours a day. They do the deep research. They know more about whatever's going on with their child than any practitioner ever could. And that combined with my own experience has kind of shaped something I say so often on my podcast. People are probably tired of me saying it, which is that at the end of the day, we are each our own primary healthcare provider. And I think that mindset is really, really important because for a lot of years, it was so common to outsource that decision making and the control of our health to a medical figure of some sort. And change can happen the best when we're in the driver's seat, when we take full responsibility and autonomy for our own health, realizing we are the ones who make the daily decisions that compound, that add up to what health actually is. And that's not to say we can't work with practitioners. I think some of the best outcomes happen when we, as our own healthcare practitioner, partner with experts who have specific expertise in something we don't fully know yet and work as partners. But I say this often for the mindset piece of like, we still have to stay in the driver's seat. And when we're the mom, we have to stay in the driver's seat for our kids because no practitioner can ever, by nature of not being us, take enough time to fully know what we can know from the experience of living within our body. And I know there's all kinds of kind of snarky comebacks of that. Like we see the debate online of doctors saying, don't confuse your Google search with my medical degree. And then we see people saying, don't confuse your, 10 minutes of learning about this in medical school with my 10 years of living with it. And I think there's that like important mindset piece and the balance and the coming into true partnership, not an imbalanced vertical relationship, but a true horizontal relationship where actual partnership and change can happen.
Oh, absolutely. I remember when my kid was 2, he got diagnosed 2 weeks before his second birthday, and he had lost about 5 pounds in 2 weeks. And so you could count his ribs, and he had little skinny arms, little skinny legs, and this ginormous belly. And the muscles actually separated like a pregnant person. And I remember the doctors just wanted to always constipated, put him on more laxative, put him on more laxative, put him on more laxatives. And thank God at the time my mom was a nurse, and she goes, Heather, kids with constipation don't look like this, they don't complain of their bellies hurting like this every day. Like there's something else going wrong. You need to demand, to get them in somewhere to have, more diagnostic stuff done. And then right off the bat, the specialist knew exactly what it was. But you can't give up. Like it's tough sometimes to overcome that kind of arrogant attitude of some of these practitioners. But as a mom's intuition, in your heart that something's wrong and you got to keep fighting for your kid.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, this is a great spot. We're going to pause real quick for a commercial. When we come back, I want to dive deeper into the topic of today, which is nature deficit disorder. And, maybe some of you have never heard that before and you're like, well, what the heck does that mean? But it's one of my favorite conversations because these tools, these foundations that are so easy and most of the time free are often forgotten. And this is where real health starts to build upon itself. So when we get back to the basics, when we get back to nature, like miracles can happen. So I'm excited to dive in deeper with this. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back.
There's a new word for wellness, NIKKI. NIKKI is your personal wellness companion, a sleek, wearable device that lets you choose from a variety of programs to match your day. With a simple tap on the NIKKI screen, you can explore wellness programs created for different moments and lifestyles. Need a lift? Select energy. Looking to unwind? Tap stress and anxiety. Want to feel more at ease? Choose pain. Heading out on a trip? Try travel to help you feel ready for new adventures. From busy mornings to quiet evenings, NIKKI puts a variety of wellness experiences right at your fingertips and on your wrist. Life moves fast. NIKKI moves with you. It's a portable way to bring wellness technology into your everyday routine, wherever life takes you. Your day, your choice, your wellness program. NIKKI Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency-enhanced health. We are NIKKI.com.
Fantastic. Welcome back. I'm super jazzed to hear about this. Tell us, what do you mean by nature deficit disorder?
Oh, I love this topic too. Thanks for asking. It's such a fun soapbox for me because I have been through the gamut. So I will share that I learned a lot of this the hard way, especially being now almost 20 years in the world of health and wellness, and at times getting very much kind of sucked into shiny object syndrome and seeing biohacking develop as this whole like multi-billion-dollar industry now, all the fancy supplements that are available, these like devices that can do all these fancy things. It took me years of trying all those things and all the protocols and all the different things to realize that the vast majority of them are actually imperfectly trying to mimic nature, and that we are spending thousands and thousands of dollars trying to mimic nature while divorcing ourselves from actually spending time in nature. And as I started opening my eyes to this and connecting the dots, I was absolutely blown away because it was such a paradigm shift for me, coming from a very like cause and effect background, very biochemical background. My dad was a biomedical engineer. I like a lot of these things were very prevalent in my childhood, even, and then in my research, just kind of like falling into that cause and effect. Even when it comes to the natural side, almost like a whack-a-mole symptom cause and effect with like, okay, this symptom treat with this vitamin. So maybe it wasn't a pharmaceutical, but like, what supplements am I going to take? What protocols am I going to do to address this thing? And what I started realizing, I read the book, The Bioelectric, and then several books beyond that. And that shifted my perspective so much from thinking of the body as biochemical first to realizing the body is almost entirely a bioelectrical, electromagnetic organism, and that the biochemical is always a downstream effect of the voltage. And so when I started thinking of a voltage first perspective of the human body, I realized how obvious it was, even though I had not really noticed for years, but how obvious it was that everything we need to live optimally within an electromagnetic kind of perspective of human biology is within our environment outside. So if we think of humans as animals, which we are, of course, we are more than that as well, but our bodies, we have a human body that is meant to interact with nature. And in essence, we're living in these like kind of fake zoos that we create for ourselves in our house that are really terrible environments. Like we actually wouldn't put most zoo animals in environments that have a lot of the things that we have in our modern environments as humans. And then we do all these fancy things like try to mimic the lighting of outdoors. We try to mimic the temperature of what we prefer outdoors to be, or whatever it may be. But we can now, in modern life, spend 100% of our time inside, basically. And there are people who do. And I felt like the data here was very fascinating, because when we think from a voltage first, electromagnetic first perspective of human biology, we realize electrical communication is what drives health. And our cells communicate electrically, our sodium potassium pumps, our calcium pumps, everything, ion channels are voltage gated within the cell. And so we can take all the supplements in the world, and if we're not taking into account the voltage side and having like the right voltage within the cell, we're still not going to be able to communicate. It's going to be a chink within the hose always, because that communication is blocked. And so from there, I started wondering, well, what would optimally supporting the electromagnetism of the body look like? And the beautiful thing there is, I realized, yes, there's all these fancy tools that help with voltage and with all these things, and they are all designed to mimic nature, which hopefully we can all access in some form every day, and that's free. And so I think a lot of these things get overlooked or underestimated because of their simplicity. And like I said, it's easy, and I get it, falling into the shiny object, fancy new thing to try syndrome. However, even if you're going to do those things, I think the foundational things of addressing the nature deficit disorder actually make any of those other things you add on more effective as well. And the good news is it does not require living 100% in nature. I have actually seen people do that who needed to intensively heal, and it's drastic how much change you can see very quickly when you fully immerse in nature. But the majority of these changes can happen just from having an understanding of why the body needs nature, what elements of nature we need actually to be healthy, and then getting a mixture of exposure to those elements in nature and just curating our home environment to be a little bit more similar to the environment we would encounter outside. So this is categories like having direct skin connection with the earth, whether it be standing on soil, walking on the beach, getting in water of some sort, which we know that that the earth is basically a sphere of the right voltage that our body needs. We can build up kind of, if you think of it overly simplistically, like a positive charge, not connecting with the earth enough. And when we have a direct connection with the earth, we kind of neutralize that charge. And it's like the voltage gates neutralize and we get into the right voltage again. Same thing with light exposure. It is definitely not a secret. I know even Huberman has done multiple episodes on this, which I love to see, but the modern light environment for most humans is pretty abysmal. And just understanding that, we can make small shifts. So I come back over and over to getting natural light as close to sunrise as possible, as close to waking as possible, is probably one of the most impactful things we can do for our health. It's free, and most people don't do it. Yet most people are willing to take like hundreds of dollars worth of supplements and things, but not willing to wake up for the sunrise. So that is one encouragement I often give people. Like, I get it. I was not a morning person either. I did not want to wake up for sunrise. When I was healing, I would set an alarm for whatever time sunrise was and literally just force myself to get out of bed and go lay down outside, but just to get that natural light, not through a window, not through glasses or contacts. And that is drastic how that impacts the electrical composure of our body, and also our hormones, our melatonin production that next night, our cortisol, which gets a lot of talk on social media right now, and so much more downstream of that. But that's a free thing that most people don't implement, that I think if you've never implemented, just experiment with for a month and see if you don't notice a drastic difference. Same thing with midday sun, which we can go deeper on that topic if you want as well. I feel like this has been unfairly demonized because of the
No, I just love the fact that you brought up Elaine's book on this show, because we've actually had her on the show and, talking about the bioelectric. And it's just, especially being a frequency generating company, we absolutely love talking about anything electricity, frequency, like it's just very much on brand with what we're doing here at NIKKI. But so I know simplistic things. So let's talk, you ground, first morning sun. So I love the midday sun. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, and to some degree, all the things I've talked about already support the mitochondria both directly and indirectly. And I think that's another overlooked area of health. I feel like midday sun is especially unique and impactful here, and was unfairly demonized when we all started worrying about skin cancer. And we got told that any kind of even like light skin color change from being in the sun was skin damage, and that we needed to be covered in sunscreen all the time and never get exposure to the sun. I also think we oversimplified the conversation when we just made it about vitamin D, because side tangent, there's a subset of the population, including me, who have certain vitamin D receptor mutations that cannot and do not absorb oral vitamin D. So I had low vitamin D for years, took tons and tons and tons of vitamin D. Number did not change at all. And I actually had negative effects from taking the vitamin D, which is what we're told. You can replace the sun, just take vitamin D. Getting my light exposure and sun exposure in the right ranges and making that a priority, my vitamin D is now 86, and I have not taken oral vitamin D in years. So I just put that out there. Even if it were just about vitamin D, to me, the sun is still the answer. But surprisingly, because I talk about like a decent amount of controversial things, the most controversial thing I talk about that I probably get the most questions about is when I say I always try to get bright midday sun exposure whenever possible. And I do not ever personally, not advice, but I never wear sunscreen. And people are like, how can you not wear sunscreen? Aren't you like scared of aging and skin cancer? And on the one hand, no, I'm not concerned with either of those things personally. Also, we know statistically, if you actually isolate the data, which AI is great at, it is not sun exposure that correlates to skin cancer. It is only sunburn. So that's one thing to remember. And sun exposure in healthy, moderate amounts is linked strongly to reduced risk of many other types of cancer. So not that we don't want to be aware of skin cancer. I also personally think there's more to it that comes into play, like our diet and artificial oils that we're eating that are getting incorporated into our phospholipid membranes and then mutating, which is a whole different topic. But even if we wanted to be aware of skin cancer doesn't kill nearly as many people as the big killers of heart disease and all the big cancers. And those are both positively affected by the correct amount of sun exposure. So I think it's at least worth weighing those things. But I think bright midday sun exposure is actually one of the most voltage supporting, mitochondria supporting, whole body supporting things we can do. And we've been told to demonize it. We know it helps with nitric oxide. We know it helps with the body's voltage, with mineral usage within the body, and so much more. So this is one I encourage people, do your own research, question everything, even and especially me. However, when I really looked into the data on this, I realized I think we've missed the mark by avoiding the sun for so long. And the piece that goes hand in hand with this, that I think is also very complementary to getting adequate sun exposure in a healthy way, is being aware of our mineral environment. We were also told for many decades to avoid salt, and that salt was bad. And if we come back to the idea of the body as an electromagnetic organism, think about if you have a glass of distilled water. If you remember this from high school biology, you cannot really send electricity through distilled water. It's very largely not conductive. Electricity does not travel through it. If you have salt water, you can now send electricity through the water. It is now conductive because it has electrolytes. Sodium is an electrolyte, so it lets electricity travel. Well, the body is very electric. If we don't have enough minerals, we're not optimally electrically communicating within our cells. Sodium potassium pumps, as you might guess, need sodium and potassium to function properly. And a lot of us are getting drastically less minerals, key minerals, including sodium, of course, also magnesium, potassium, and then smaller ones beyond that, than we need to have proper electrical communication within the body. So I've seen over and over again, people who just optimize their light, their minerals, start to see massive changes because the body is electric first. And I had one of the researchers, the primary researchers on salt research in the world, and he talked about how a lot of the work that he's done actually has been misconstrued kind of from a pharmaceutical lens. But he's like, actually, 76% of people are not getting enough salt. And we've been told too much salt raises your blood pressure. He's like, what we actually see in those 76% of people is getting enough salt lowers your blood pressure. So most people are getting not nearly enough of these key electrolytes they need, and salt being a big one. And so I asked him on that podcast, I was like, what is kind of the ideal range? He's like, probably somewhere between 8 to 10 grams per day, which is way more than most of us are getting. So I thought that was an interesting side tangent, but all to come back to this idea, we are meant to live in nature more. We're human animals living in a...
Hold on 1 second, because not all salt is created equal. And so I think we need to say that, right, for folks who are like, got their regular crappy iodized salt, be like, oh, and piling it on their food. No, no, no.
That's a great point. Yeah. So if you did that with iodized salt, you would be getting drastically more iodine than you need, which for anybody who's ever been in the thyroid world, that's its own whole conversation, because iodine seemingly can actually, in the right, very careful ranges, be helpful for the thyroid. But outside of that, even with too much, be very detrimental to the thyroid. So great point on that. Try to get there's so much to consider now, but a microplastic free, heavy metal free, iodine free, natural salt from a clean source that's been third-party tested. It's crazy that we have to add all those, but thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely. I think we had the founder of Orcs Salt, it comes from Africa, very clean. I absolutely love her salts. So we had her on the show before too. So go back and listen to that episode if you want to know more about a clean salt source.
I love it. And so kind of to loop that all in and just kind of put a pin in that, I would say all of those things, those are big factors within this idea of nature deficit disorder. I think most modern health problems we see can be looped in at least a little bit under the umbrella of nature deficit disorder. And there are researchers like Justine Stenger, who if you haven't talked to her, I highly recommend her, but she even takes it further to explain how if we're seeing that, like within nature deficit disorder, we kind of can have the experience of different levels of cell danger response. She goes really deep on what's happening in the body and how then to allow the body to heal, because the body will heal on its own if given the right inputs, how to give the body what it needs to heal. And I think on the drastic end of this, we see studies like the camping study, where they took people into nature for a span of 3 to 7 days with no artificial lights. They didn't have their phones, and saw ridiculous drastic improvements in their labs, their hormones, their sleep, their circadian rhythm. Most of their sleep problems fully resolved within 1 week. So again, it's not that we need to go live in nature, though if you want to do that for a week, probably one of the best things we can do for our health. It can be as simple as avoiding the bright lights after dark, mimicking the sunset, trying to go to lower amber bulbs after the sun goes down, not eating after sunset, getting that early light exposure to let our cortisol have the correct response in the morning and to let our melatonin have the correct response in the evening, and then building that as a habit over time. So it's not drastic changes. They're not fancy. There's no patent. I can't sell them, but I think they're some of the most impactful things we can do for our health.
110%. I absolutely love it. Like I said, this whole conversation, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. I had a client one time. He worked with me for a year and I still couldn't believe that after the year, he's like, Heather, I'm having really bad issues with my anxiety. Can you recommend another supplement? I said, have you gone out and done your grounding today? No. Have you done your breath work today? No. Have you gotten your sunlight today? No. And I think 2 more other things that are free, no. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to give you another recommendation for a supplement. You keep trying to pass go and collect $200, but it doesn't work that way. Like I was flabbergasted after he worked with me for a year and he still didn't quite grasp the fundamental fact of needing these things put down first before, supplements are just that. They're supplementary. They're not supposed to be the be all end all, but we've been unfortunately taught that way for so long from the medical field, a pill for every ill. And it's a really hard brainwashing to overcome.
Absolutely. And it's almost like a triage effect too, of like, there's all these kind of cliches around you can't out supplement a poor diet. You also can't out diet lack of sleep. You can't out exercise lack of sleep. You can't out any of those things having stress levels that are in the wrong place and not having these natural cues. Actually, even if we don't emotionally and mentally feel stress, the body is registering as danger signals. And so I think that's the other piece of understanding this is like separating things into categories of how can I send safety signals to my body and where am I accidentally or on purpose sending stress signals to my body? And how do I kind of shift that more into the category of sending safety signals? Because when the body is given what it needs, when it feels safe, when the nervous system is allowed to downshift, and when we get exposure to nature, the body knows how to heal. It's perfectly designed for that. That was a shift I realized, and I'm so grateful for in the experience of being told I had autoimmune disease, is in that I was told your body's attacking itself, like you're attacking your thyroid. And I had all these stories in my head about I'm sick, my body's attacking itself, which are very disempowering and also not true, because I realized if my body wanted to attack itself, it could kill me in less than a second, instantly. My body was always on my side. So the fact that something wasn't functioning the way I wanted it to was communication from my body that it needed something it wasn't getting, or it was getting too much of something it didn't need. And when I started to shift into curiosity and look at that as communication from my body and ask better internal questions instead of like, why am I so tired? Why can't I lose weight? Why am I so sick? Shifting into more empowering questions, I started getting much better answers. And when I started having complete faith in my body's ability to thrive and operating from that perspective instead of operating from the identity of I'm sick, my body started to shift too. And so the beauty of all this is it took me 20 years and a long and winding path, and probably a couple $100,000 spent over the years between treatments and supplements and all the things. to realize that in a lot of cases, most of what we need is within us and within nature and is not expensive. And most of the time is entirely free.
110%. That's a beautiful way to end. Boom, mic drop. You are definitely a professional, and that's why I love talking with you. So this is the shameless plug time of the show. So what are you working on right now? How can people find you?
Everything is kind of centered. The hub is wellnessmama.com. You can find the podcast there. I still write blog posts. I know those are antiquated now. I still enjoy writing, so I write them. But everything lives on wellnessmama.com. I actually do read like ratings and reviews on the podcast and comments on the blog. So if anybody wants to come say hi, love hearing from the community and love still getting to podcast with so many amazing people, including you've been on my podcast. So yeah, I would be honored if people want to come say hi.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. And yes, lay down those foundations first, because then your NIKKI can even work that much better for you. Make sure to visit wearenikki.com/podcast, enter in BioBeats to get 10% off. But because we really love our customers and the way we show appreciation, we give away a NIKKI device and a wellness frequency set, $598 value on every show. Want to give a big shout out of congratulations to Brandy M, Chrisanda B, Jessica N, and Nicole K. You have won a free NIKKI device and a wellness set of frequencies. Congratulations. And if you did not win, don't be too sad. Try again. Continue to listen, continue to share, continue to like, continue to subscribe. That is how we get this message out into the world, and we couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much for your support. So make sure to go to the show notes, check out Wellness Mama, enter in your shot to win. Thank you for joining us, and make sure to have a healthy day.
NIKKI Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency enhanced health.
It's got so many options. I'm just going to go over, it's like a menu that you can choose. It's so easy to use. You just click on what you like. For example, it's got travel, pain relief, energy boost, allergies, trying all the frequencies.
This is my NIKKI. It is a bioenergetic wearable that works by emitting a specific frequency carried by a red light, as you can see on the back. It's aimed at enhancing the body's natural healing process to improve wellness and reducing stress, pain, and inflammation. And to select a frequency, you tap it to wake it up, and then you slide to the screens that list the different frequencies. I have wellness or Lyme on mine. So if we want to pick one, we just tap on it and you'll see the circles around, and there's a play button, play areas, tap there, and you can see the colors radiating that show that it's playing, and you would also see the red light on the back. And to stop, you just tap it again, and then you can slide and select a different frequency. I'm going to play afternoon. And you just tap, and away you go for your afternoon.
So there are two different things. You have the NIKKI device, and then you have the frequency sets. And so right now they have the wellness set of frequencies and they have the Lyme set of frequencies, and both of them are absolutely incredible. I use both sets on a regular basis, so I absolutely love them.
NIKKI Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency enhanced health. We are NIKKI.com. The views, information, and opinions expressed in this content are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Freemedica. Freemedica Technologies, Inc. and its employees are not responsible, nor verifies accuracy any of the information contained in the following content. The primary purpose of this content is to educate and inform. This content does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services.